Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 62 of the On Air Advocate. Where at the On Air Advocate, we look to provide education, support, and empowerment for all of those with different abilities, mental and medical illnesses, and their caregivers. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Tammy Flynn, and I am the host and producer of the On Air Advocate. And I am super excited if you are joining us here this evening or if you are catching it on the replay. Now, as always, if you think any of the content that we are talking about this evening could be relevant or helpful for anyone, please share the love and hit the share button for others. Now, as most of you know, we are in a focus on mental health, a mental health series actually that has been going on for a little bit over 2.5 weeks now and will proceed for another week or so. And with that being said, I am so excited to have another amazing guest with us here tonight, Angie Kupper. She is the creator of Finding Your Fairytale, and we are going to learn so much more about that tonight, as well as her journey and what led her to creating that in just a few moments. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited.
I am excited for you to be here and for you to share. And for some that don't know, in Finding Your Fairytale, there is a documentary along with that, which I am part of. And I am privileged, honored to be part of that as well. But I would love, Angie, for you to just kind of take it away and start to share that journey with us as to how Finding Your Fairytale even came to be a thought and where that all started from.
Yeah, definitely. It started it started on Facebook. I saw a quiz or post about like which fairy tale character would you be? And I remember laughing because I guess I have to be Sleeping Beauty because I have narcolepsy. And it's a sleep disorder. And originally I was always very embarrassed and ashamed of my disorder. And I really didn't want to talk about it. But when I had that thought initially, I was a little embarrassed. But then I thought maybe that's a way that I can actually connect with my disorder and recognize that it's not a label. It's more just one aspect of my story.
Right, right.
And if I can see myself as a Disney princess because of a struggle that I've overcome, why not, right? So Originally, that was the original idea that sparked it. And from there, I started looking at all of the other fairy tale characters that I grew up loving and really enjoying the stories of, and tried to see if there was something more modern that people could relate to that could be depicted. And so originally, it was just going to be a couple of photo shoots with some friends just to kind of empower each other and maybe, spread the word and raise awareness for the different things that we've struggled with. But as it got bigger and we really got into it, we realized, a documentary would be a good idea to tell more of the story.
Right, to get more in depth. And so much of this started, though, the passion and the purpose behind it was from when you were a little girl and the different things that happened in the early years of your life and in your teen years. And I was blessed and honored enough to be a part of that. And so I would like for you to kind of share that background story before we dive a little bit more into all the stuff that the Finding Your Fairytale project is doing.
Yeah, so, my childhood, like you said, you were a part of. You were my babysitter, which I obviously appreciate, and we have a great relationship still today. My childhood really was very magical. My mom was somebody who threw elaborate parties and was really good with all of the secrets of the Tooth Fairy and Santa and the Easter Bunny. And my favorite memory growing up is a big part of why I love the fairy tales, because it was, I think, my 5th birthday, and I wanted a Peter Pan party. And I wanted to be Peter Pan. I wanted everything themed, and I really wanted to experience that magic. And so my mom had a dress made for me so I could be female Peter Pan. But she told me that she couldn't find the Peter Pan hat. And I was devastated at 5. That was like the worst thing that could ever happen.
Right.
My costume wasn't finished. But on my birthday, I woke up and there was pixie dust leading to my windowsill, and Peter Pan's hat was there. And my mom told me that the real Peter Pan let me borrow his hat for my birthday. And that is a memory that has stuck with me my entire life. I just remember feeling so special and believing in magic, that it was real, and that, the fairy tales are real, and I could maybe be a princess someday. fast forward a few years, it wasn't always so magical. And my mom, I think a big part of why my mom did things like that was because she was struggling herself.
Mm-hmm.
She always wanted other people to see the magic and believe in themselves, because that was something she often struggled with.
Right.
And so to go
Seeing
from
that within herself.
right. And
Mm-hmm.
so to go from having this magical childhood and this woman who really helped me to believe that anything was possible, she struggled with mental illness and had a rough couple of years. And when I was 17, she ended her life. And that, to me, was a turning point, because then I started doubting happily ever possible, right? Because, your mom is such a pivotal person in your life, and for her to no longer want to continue, it had a really significant impact on me. And it still does today. Like, I'd be lying if I said that I'm over it. I'll never be over it. That's not something that you can ever completely heal from. But I went through all the stages of grief. And it took a very long time before I could even talk about it or open up to it. But I knew I wanted to do something to help people like my mom who no longer had hope, who didn't see the benefit of continuing to fight. And so I became a therapist, and I've been doing that for several years. But when I had this idea for Finding Your Fairytale, things kind of came full circle, right? I had this idea that I could be a fairy tale character. Other people could represent those characters, and we could bring back that magic and that optimism that we all had as kids,
Mm-hmm.
to say that no matter what struggles in life you're faced with, happily ever after is still possible, because it's not an end point. It's a state of being, right? It's
Right.
a choice
Right.
that you make to find happiness in the everyday, as opposed to expecting it to be this perfect fairy tale ending. And so that's where it came from, and it's interesting, because originally when I had the idea, I was more comfortable just being Sleeping Beauty, right? It was an embarrassing diagnosis. It was a frustrating diagnosis, but that's something I eventually came to terms with. My mom's suicide, however, took a lot longer. And I originally wasn't even going to talk about it in the documentary, because there is so much stigma attached to suicide, and there's so much shame and blame and controversy, unfortunately, surrounding death by suicide. And
You're freezing a little bit on your end.
About, because
You're freezing a little bit on your end.
Am I still there?
You are
You
still.
got me still?
Yeah, are you there? Yep.
Oh. We good?
I think we're good. I don't hear an echo again. I don't know. Now you're frozen. Now you're unfrozen.
Any better?
Okay. I think you're good.
We're good?
I think we're good now. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Whew.
The internet is an amazing tool, but sometimes
Right?
it has a few waves. It definitely does. Definitely.
Well, and I will say that that's something we've learned quite a bit in the project, that when you think something's going to go one way, you can plan all you want, but there's always going to be bumps in the road that you have to overcome.
Right. And so you were saying before you kind of froze up about the fact that you weren't even truly going to put your mom's full story into the Finding Your Fairytale. But I mean, I really think that is the power and the purpose and the passion and all of that behind it. You know what I'm saying? All of that derives from those experiences that you've had that have now served you to have those empathetic feelings and know that there are other people out there that are silently suffering.
Right.
And you can help, and we can help by sharing our stories. And I know that you like to quote hashtag all the time to embrace your story. And I think that's the biggest thing out of all of this, is that in the project, it doesn't mean that we have all found complete healing, or all of the answers within what we're doing. It is that we're still a work in progress and we're still going towards it. We're embracing our story and realizing that we can still move forward. We can still obtain happily ever after. And it's a state of mind and a state of movement, and not stifling ourselves to just say, this is what happened and I'm going to stay here.
Right. Yeah, such a huge part of it. Is we have 13 people in the documentary, all from different walks of life, different challenges, different struggles, and not a single one of us is saying, "Look at me, I'm healed," or "I'm over it," or "It's behind me." It's still always going to be a part of our story that got us to where we are today. But it's one chapter, right? We don't have to be completely defined by a diagnosis or a lived experience, but it is part of our story, and there's no shame in that. And I think that was what one of the really cool things about it is that as we all came together, I knew most of the characters before we started the project, but you guys didn't know each other. And one of the things that everybody talks about is it's such a different experience when you introduce yourself based on the thing that you've struggled the most with, or the thing that you've been embarrassed about or frustrated with, because there really isn't any judgment when everybody just puts it out there.
Right.
And when we can all relate to that, the walls come down, because we're not trying to put on a facade. We're not trying to hide. We're open about who we are and how we became the individual we are today.
And as we've carried this whole few weeks here on at the On Air Advocate, we've really focused on that it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to share that with others. And I think that's the biggest thing, is there's so much silence that happens. And I'm sure with you, in being a therapist as well, and I was talking, Dr. Barry was on last night and we're talking about men's health and how silent men are, and how this is really a crisis, that needs to be dealt with, that, they're so stifled as young boys to not express those feelings and those emotions, and really being able to do that and being able to express that and talk about things, because how do we ever heal if we don't talk about them?
Right. Well, and it's interesting that you mentioned that, having experienced the loss of my mother, and a few years later, the loss of my sister, my father and I have gotten very close, but my father is a big, strong, burly man. And he really struggled. And he himself said, I know that this is what you went to school for, but he was afraid to talk to a therapist. And he felt vulnerable and didn't want to talk about emotions. But one of the things that he actually really helped me to shape some of this project, because what he said helped him was a support group, because he couldn't wrap his mind around being vulnerable in front of a professional that didn't understand it, right? I think sometimes therapy can be very intimidating. But what my dad said saved him was being able to be in a support group with people who have lost children, or people who have lost a spouse. And that's one thing that I really like about the project, is that we all can relate to each other, not identically. We have all very different stories, but we can relate that we've all been through struggles, that we've all experienced pain, that we've all been at pretty low points and found a way to come out. And that's that sense of community where you're not alone and that you're not being judged, and it's a very embracing community, is a really important aspect that I feel like we are missing in a lot of our communities.
Yes. And so, kind of fast forwarding now, the Finding Your Fairytale project, the documentary, is almost all wrapped.
Close. It took a lot longer than we planned, but we wanted to make sure we did it right.
And so that's kind of coming full circle. And what is your hopes and thoughts for kind of these next steps? I know that we're looking at getting this entered into the film festival already, but for the project itself and moving forward.
I think there's so many ways we could take it. And one thing I've recognized is that sometimes you have to slow down a little bit. Take care of yourself and take care of the people around you, right? I thought that I could create film, edit, everything, a documentary in less than a year, and I have no experience whatsoever. So it's a learning experience for me that it takes time, right? And so we were hoping to have it finished a year ago, but I'm glad that we took the time we needed to make it what it could be.
Right.
And so, I mean, first and foremost, we want to make sure people see it, right? So we want to make sure that it gets to the audiences that it needs to. And really what we're trying to target is, you know, young people. So teens, early 20s, primarily just people who might be going through some of those things that we've already lived through and are continuing to fight, to give them the inspiration to say that it is possible to get through, to give them role models to say, you know, we may not be perfect. By no means are any of us perfect, or do we have the right answers as to how to overcome it, but to be proof that it is possible, right? And to also, again, rekindle that optimism and that magic that we all felt as kids before we were given a harsh dose of reality with whatever struggles we face. So I'm hoping that it gets into anybody's, that it's, you know, in front of the right audiences, to really help people keep fighting their battles and to see the value in their story.
And I think within seeing that, and if anyone checked out about a week and a half ago, we had Maggie on talking about post-traumatic stress disorder, and she is part of the Finding Your Fairytale project too. And I think that she expressed that in her working through her grief and her struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder, her kind of engulfing herself within helping and getting out there in the community and being active and doing something that is directly helping another, you know, kind of turning your pain into purpose, has served a lot of us very, very well. And so though that's not the clinical answer, and, you know, listening to all the doctors this week, you know, I do think that therapy is an amazing thing. And I think that getting out there and getting support groups, and I think calling hotlines and all of that, but sometimes us as individuals, something that we can do all on our own without seeking all those outside feelers, is get yourself involved within the community or an organization that directly has been impacted by what you have been struck by, you know, because your journey and your guidance may be the thing that changes someone else's life. You know, and I think that's so profound when we look at the documentary Completely Together. We have 13 individuals with all different backgrounds and all different stories, you know, that I'm sure there are so many that can relate to and be like, that's what's going on, you know, and that you're not alone, you know, you're not isolated in this. There's many of us struggling, but putting yourself in that position, I think, is just so powerful.
Right. Well, and the more that we're willing to talk about it, the less stigma there will be, right? Because the more we're putting out there that it doesn't have to be this this horrible thing or this stigmatized experience, and the more we're willing to put like a human face to the things that we struggle with, the more comfortable people will be coming forward. The less assumptions people are going to have, the more facts people will be exposed to because we're talking about it, right? Yeah. And so, I mean, it is really exciting. I do agree, like finding a way to give back to the same community that you can relate to the struggle. Like that's why I became a therapist. Right. But it took years to get to that point.
Right.
So I do think it's important for people to make sure they focus on taking care of themselves first, but recognizing that part of the healing process is finding a way to find community with people that can relate and giving back. You know, this documentary was a big part of that for me. Was, you know, my mom, I mean, it's been, 13 years, almost 13 years since she died. And it took me over 10 years to get to the point where I could even talk about it on any sort of platform. And actually, the first time I posted on social media about my loss of my mom, it was her 10-year anniversary. And I made just a general Facebook post saying, you know, that keep an eye out for people who are struggling, lend a hand, lend an ear. You never know whose life you might be saving. And somebody reached out to me within minutes. And it was a woman I went to high school with, and she thanked me for being brave enough to tell my story. And she told me that, she said, you'll never know how much I needed to hear that tonight. And that right there was a validation that we need to be talking about it. And she actually does make an appearance in the documentary, because I didn't know it at the time, but she was literally in the process of planning her suicide when we had that conversation. And her life has changed tremendously in the last 2 years for the better. And so recognizing that sharing your story and just literally just telling somebody else that you've experienced it could be all that person needs to see that they're not alone, to see that there's somebody you can talk to, and that there's hope out there. Right. She actually, that interaction with her inspired me to want to talk about my mother's death in the project. It made me realize how important it is to talk about all of the chapters of our lives, because other people can relate and need to hear that message.
I feel like I've had a lot of tears going on here with this. Yes. I think that her story and meeting her, during this process too. I mean, it just shows a lot of times the people that visually seem so incredibly strong to us on the outside are suffering on the inside. It's the ones that are silent, and that they're like, oh, you're always so strong. You're always so strong, that no one is asking you, are you okay? And I think that's something that we tackled this last 2 weeks too, with the different doctors that were on, just very forwardly asking someone,
right,
are you okay? What is going on? Are you experiencing sadness? And really confronting that, because sometimes when we beat around the bush and we don't forwardly ask someone, they're like, yeah, you know how we do that. I'm fine. It's fine. But are you really fine?
Right.
So I think that Facebook post that you made and her coming forward is just a testament, so much to that, we need to be, reaching out, telling our stories, embracing our stories, and all those people in your life that are super, super strong, make sure that you're shooting them a text message too. Make sure that you're, reaching out saying, hey, are you okay? Are you okay?
Because sometimes the people that are trying so hard to make everyone else happy or trying to be there for everyone else are the ones who also need that for themselves. Right? Because they can relate and they don't want to see anybody else go through the same pain that they're experiencing. And so, a lot of times it is the caretakers or, the person in your circle who's always, making sure that you're okay, reciprocate that, because a lot of times they're struggling too. And part of their reaching out for help is to take care of everybody else but themselves. Right. I mean, I think my mom was a great example of that. She gave so much to my sister and I, that I think eventually she kind of lost herself. And, there was a part actually, Tammy, from the documentary that was really, I guess there were a couple of signs throughout the process that it kind of reinforced what I was doing, because this is a scary process to put your story out there, to talk about demons and the skeletons in the closet, so to speak. And I think one of the things that really hit home to me was when we did the photo shoot for your character at your house. It showed me this poem that meant so much to you, about, I think it was called Don't Quit.
Yeah.
And
I have it here.
I figured you would. You've got, I mean, that was something that you said had been so instrumental in your life. And I remember the poem itself is wonderful. And it already had me feeling emotional until you told me to flip it over.
I should have brought some Kleenex in here.
Because knowing that came from my mom, it just, again, it hit hard, because my mom always was somebody who tried to take care of everybody else, tried to care for everybody else, tried to cheer everyone else up, and tried to motivate everybody else to keep going. But she just couldn't do that for herself. And so it broke my heart in a way to see that she was so eager to give that to everybody but herself. But at the same time, it felt like things came full circle, because I know she gave that to you, but there's a reason it ended up back in my hands at some point, right?
Exactly.
To remind me that this is what I'm doing. So it felt like it was her telling me, like,
you're on the right track.
Don't quit, keep it up. You're on the right track. And so, yeah, I mean, that was really huge for me. And so that is a big part of the documentary, because again, it's so scary to be so vulnerable on such a big
Mm-hmm.
platform. And I know you took a really big leap of faith when you started the On Air Advocate, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you're opening yourself up to potential criticism, to a lot of eyes. But
Right.
the more real we are, and the more human we are, and the more honest we are in accepting every part of us, the less any of that criticism is even going to impact us, you know?
Right.
Um,
And I
and
think, oh, go on.
I
Go
was gonna
on.
say, and again, just knowing that talking about it might be uncomfortable in the process initially, but when you start to see the ripple effect that it has
Mm-hmm.
and the people that it impacts, it reinforces everything that we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And um, something I'm gonna try not to lose it because I don't have Kleenex in here by my desk. Usually I keep Kleenex right here. But this Don't Quit poem, it's right here, that she gave to me less than 3 weeks before my dad died. And at a time in my life when I was very, 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 very broken. And she was my friend as well and knew that I was broken. And so to see all of that come full circle, to see that she was the one who empowered me, couldn't feel empowered for herself, but empowered me enough to continue going and to continue striving and to continue to have this wonderful young lady right here in my life forever, and for her to never quit and to keep pushing forward no matter the obstacles and the losses and everything. It speaks volumes, but it speaks volumes in all different ways. That one, someone may seem strong and they may be the cheerleader, but we need to sit back and say they probably need somebody being their cheerleader as well, for all of that, and making people aware. And I talk about that a lot with caregivers. And my role in the Finding Your Fairytale project is being the caregiver. And so, as we know, when we're lifelong caregivers, there is so much alienation that happens. There is so much loneliness. There is so much unknown. It's not a stint of time, it's a lifetime that you are caring for the quality of another individual's life and their happiness and what they consider a good quality of life. You're in control of that for your whole life. And I always say that we have big burdens, but God has given us big shoulders. And so, as I've gone forward, I go through with it with a lot of faith. But when we look at all these different avenues of caregivers that are out there that are struggling, people that struggle from different anxiety and depression, people who have experienced post-traumatic stress disorder, who are carrying these burdens, along with them, is that we all just need to be talking. I think, and that's ending that stigma that you're talking about, that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to not be on your A game every single moment of the day. It's okay to feel off and to say, maybe I need to go talk to someone, and maybe I do need to have some kind of medication. I can't focus, or I can't this, or I can't that. But I think that our world a lot of times gets very, I like to call it judgy about the different things, that we do, instead of embracing that and saying, it's not a big deal. And I love that. That was actually in the Mighty wrote something. It was a couple weeks ago. They did a whole story on it's okay to not be okay. And I thought it was fabulous, that we have more of our large media talking about it, for that.
Completely. Yeah. Well, and again, when we can admit that we're not okay is when we're open to help, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we try to pretend like everything's fine, or we refuse to talk about it, is really the most dangerous time, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to not be okay. It's human, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
like to expect that everything's going to be perfect and that you're always going to be on your A game is unrealistic and not fair to you, right?
Right.
And that's a big part of what I teach the kids that I work with in my job is, that perfection isn't attainable, and
Right.
it's that it's okay to be imperfect and to embrace those flaws or those aspects of your story that are less than perfect, because one, it makes us all unique, right?
Mm-hmm.
Individuals, And it doesn't always have to be a negative thing. Like I could have chosen to see my diagnosis or my experience with my mom as solely negative things that would weigh me down. Or I could recognize them as an opportunity, one that I wouldn't wish on anybody, that I obviously would prefer to not have had. Mm. But that was outside of my control. But it is within my control how I respond to it, right? Mm-hmm. I could sit and mope and be miserable, or I could do something that helps me and in turn helps somebody else, right? Mm-hmm. Like I always say, I turned my pain into passion, mm-hmm. right? Recognizing that emotion in me is something I hope other people don't have to feel, right? Mm-hmm. So I know that there's nothing I could have done to save my mom, but that took a long time for me to get over that guilt and that shame. But I think I initially started psychology somewhat selfishly to try to understand, right? To try to understand. But I recognize now I'll never know exactly what was going through her head. And I don't want to. I don't want to know what that was like. But I do know that I can help other people, hopefully, to not make that same choice, to see the benefit of living, to see the beauty of life and the magic that still is, you know, if we can open our eyes to that and be vulnerable and be open to help, be open to everything that comes with all of those challenges.
Well, you're doing it, sweetheart. You're doing it.
I'm trying.
You're helping the world to embrace their story, and I love it. And I thank you for sharing all that you have shared tonight. I'm blessed and honored to have you in my life. Does it off of this show. And on this show, I love her to pieces. Like, she's my girl.
Me too.
If you have not checked out the Finding Your Fairytale project, we're going to drop the Facebook page below, as well as the website. The documentary will be out soon, so it is done. It's in its final stages, going off to the film festivals, and so we can't wait to share that with all of you. And me and Angie were talking about, in closing tonight, for wrapping this up, that we thought it would be appropriate to read this poem. So for anybody that is just looking for a little bit tonight, this should give you your push to a great Friday. And a smile. All right, so here it goes, folks. Don't quit. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Success is failure turned inside out, a silver lining of the clouds of doubt, and you never can tell how close you are, and it may be near when it seems afar. So stick to your fight when your heart is hit. It's when things go wrong that you must not quit. Strong. All right. So on that note, thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight to the On Air Advocate. If you want any more of our podcasts, YouTube tutorial videos, or any more of our information, you can head right on over to onairadvocate.com. Also, if you want to be a part of our private group where we have carry-on conversations every day and you can ask questions openly, you can go right to the top of this Facebook page and hit the blue Visit Group button and request to be a part of our group. So with that, you all have a wonderful evening, and remember, it's okay to not be okay. Let's embrace our stories and start talking about it. Thanks for being with us. Good night.